It started as a nightmare. A boy in a wheelchair, mocked and spun by rich kids who thought money gave them power. Parents turned away. Teachers stayed silent. And just when it seemed the cruelty would break him, the doors burst open. A single dad stormed in, with 20 Paralympic athletes behind him. Champions who turned shame into strength, silencing the laughter with raw power, skill, and heart. But what looked like victory was only the beginning, because in this town, secrets run deep. A whispered truth at a glittering gala threatens to unravel everything, and the fight for dignity turns into a battle against lies, betrayal, and a powerful man desperate to bury the truth. Can one boy, a single dad, and a community brave enough to rise stand against privilege and fear? Or will the price of courage be more than they can bear? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun painted Maple Ridge in gold, but Ava Reynolds barely noticed. Her hands gripped the steering wheel of the modified van as they joined the parade of luxury SUVs snaking toward the prep school entrance. You know what castles have? Eli adjusted his seatbelt, drumming his fingers against his thigh. Moats, dragons, maybe a dungeon or two. Good thing you've got your armor then. Ava glanced at her son through the rearview mirror. His navy blazer hung crisp on his shoulders, the school crest catching light. Mom, wheelchairs aren't exactly siege equipment. Says who? You could ram the gates, storm the keep. She kept her voice light, but her stomach churned. 3 weeks since they'd moved back. 3 weeks of preparation for this moment. The limestone facade of Maple Ridge Prep rose ahead, all ivy and tradition. Parents in designer sunglasses supervised their children's exits from German cars. Ava pulled into the accessible parking spot near the front entrance. Ready to conquer? She killed the engine. Born ready. Eli's grin didn't quite reach his eyes. The van's hydraulic lift hummed to life, lowering Eli to the pavement. Morning dew still clung to the manicured grass. A woman in pearls clutched her coffee tighter as they passed, offering a smile that never left her lips. Mrs. Reynolds? The assistant principal, Mr. Garrett, hurried over. His handshake felt damp. Welcome, welcome. And this must be Eli. That's me. Eli rolled forward. Unless there's another kid with wheels you're expecting. Mr. Garrett's laugh came out forced. Right. Well, the main entrance has our newest ramp. Brand new. Just installed last month. They moved toward the stone steps where clusters of students gathered. Navy blazers and plaid skirts, leather bags that cost more than most people's rent. The ramp Mr. Garrett mentioned looked like an afterthought, aluminum against centuries-old stone. Preston, move your bag. A blond boy near the entrance kicked his teammate's lacrosse gear aside. Preston Whitmore. Ava recognized him from the donor gala photos, his father's sharp jaw, his mother's cold eyes. Why? Oh. Preston's gaze landed on Eli's chair. Right. The special needs kid. I need wheels, not special treatment. Eli rolled past him toward the ramp. Preston stepped into his path. Must be nice getting pushed around everywhere. I push myself, actually. Eli's knuckles whitened on his wheel rims. Want a race? Bet I'd smoke you. The cluster of boys laughed, but not with Eli. Preston reached down and spun Eli's right wheel, sending the chair into a half-turn. Whoa, look at that, like a shopping cart. Another boy grabbed the left wheel. Or one of those teacup rides. Stop! Eli's voice cracked as he tried to regain control, his hands fighting against their grip. Ava's muscles coiled. Every instinct screamed to intervene, to unleash the corporate executive who'd stared down boardrooms full of sharks. But Eli had begged her that morning, let me handle things my way. What's wrong, Wheelie? Preston spun him again. Dizzy already? Creative nickname. Eli forced out a laugh that fooled no one. Bet that took all 3 of your brain cells. Preston's face darkened. He leaned close. My dad owns half this school. You're just the diversity hire. A phone appeared in someone's hand, recording. Parents walked past, eyes carefully averted, shepherding their own children through the doors. Nobody stopped. Nobody spoke. "At least I earned my spot." Eli's voice shook now. "What's your talent? Spending Daddy's money?" Preston grabbed both Wheels, holding them still. "You don't belong here, Wheels. This place has standards." "Yeah?" Eli met his stare. "Then how'd you get in?" The boys released his chair with a shove. Eli caught himself before tipping, but his shoulders hunched forward, making himself smaller. The laughter followed him up the ramp. "See you in class, shopping cart," Preston called out. Mr. Garrett had vanished. The other parents studied their phones with sudden intensity. Ava stood alone by the van, nails cutting crescents into her palms. Her son disappeared through the heavy doors, swallowed by stone and shadow. The prayer came unbidden, barely a whisper. "Please don't let this break him." A woman in yoga pants touched her arm. "Boys will be boys, right?" Her smile held pity, not kindness. "I'm sure he'll toughen up." Ava didn't trust herself to speak. She climbed back into the van and sat there, watching the entrance where her son had vanished. The morning sun had shifted, throwing the school into shade. Somewhere inside those walls, Eli was navigating hallways built for different bodies, different stories, different kinds of armor. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eli. "Still conquering. Don't worry, Mom." She typed back, "My brave knight." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. The car line had emptied. Ava started the engine, but couldn't bring herself to leave. Not yet. If this morning was any indication, the castle had dragons after all. And her son would face them alone, shoulders hunched but still rolling forward into whatever battles waited behind those ancient doors. The gymnasium smelled like floor wax and teenage anxiety. Rows of students sat cross-legged on bleachers while Principal Harrington droned through announcements. Ava stood near the emergency exit, close enough to escape if needed. And please join me in welcoming our newest student, Eli Reynolds." Polite applause scattered through the gym. Eli sat front row, spine rigid, as 600 eyes found him. Then the whispers started. A phone screen glowed, then another. The video spread like wildfire through the bleachers. Preston spinning Eli's wheels, the mocking laughter, the cruel nicknames. Someone giggled. Someone else showed their neighbor. The whispers grew louder. "Is that from this morning?" "Shopping cart." "Did you see his face?" Eli's shoulders curved inward. His hands gripped his wheel rims white-knuckle tight. Principal Harrington kept talking, oblivious about inclusion and excellence and other empty words that meant nothing when your son sat alone in a sea of judgment. Ava stepped forward. She demolished them all. Every last... The double doors burst open. A man in worn jeans and a faded army t-shirt strode in, followed by a parade that made the gym fall silent. Athletes poured through the entrance, some in racing wheelchairs, others walking on prosthetic legs that gleamed like armor. A woman with one arm dribbled a basketball. A man with no legs below the knees moved on specialized crutches with the grace of a dancer. 20 athletes filled the center court, their presence electric. "Sorry to interrupt, Principal Harrington," the man's voice carried without shouting. "Luke Carter. I coach adaptive sports over at the rec center. Heard you had a new student who might like to meet some fellow wheelers." A basketball appeared, spinning on the finger of a woman with arms like steel cables. She wore a Team USA jersey. "That's Raina Washington," someone whispered. "She won gold in Rio." Luke pulled a whistle from his pocket. "We thought we'd show you all what wheelchair basketball really looks like, unless you're too busy?" Principal Harrington stammered something about schedules, but the athletes were already moving. Racing chairs emerged from the hallway, sleek, angled machines built for speed. The woman named Raina tossed the ball to a teammate who caught it one-handed while maneuvering his chair with precision that defied physics. 5 on 5, Luke called out. "Let's show them how it's done." The game exploded into motion. Chairs collided with controlled violence. The ball flew between players who pivoted and spun like their wheels were extensions of their bodies. A player with both legs amputated above the knee sank a three-pointer that would have made any NBA player proud. The gym erupted. Students leaped to their feet. Someone started chanting, "USA, USA," when Raina executed a behind-the-back pass that led to a thunderous dunk from her teammate. "Hey, new kid," Raina rolled over to Eli. "You play?" Eli shook his head, eyes wide. "Come on." She tossed him the ball. "Let's see what you got." My chair isn't." "Deshaun," Raina called. "Bring the spare." A racing chair appeared, low and aggressive. The athletes helped Eli transfer, their hands steady and matter-of-fact. No pity, no awkwardness, just athletes helping another athlete. "Push from here," Deshaun demonstrated. "Lean into the turn." Eli's first push sent him gliding. His second was stronger. By the third, a smile cracked across his face. Raina fed him the ball. He missed the shot by a mile, but the team cheered like he'd won the championship. "Preston Whitmore," Luke's voice cut through the noise. "You look athletic. Want to try?" Preston froze. His friends nudged him forward. Luke had already wheeled over another sports chair. "Unless you're scared?" That did it. Preston dropped into the chair, cockiness returning. He pushed off hard, too hard. The chair tipped sideways, dumping him onto the polished floor. The gym held its breath. Preston laughed, not a mean laugh or a fake laugh, but something genuine and surprised. "That's harder than it looks." "Everything worth doing is." Luke helped him up. "Try again. This time, feel the balance." The demo continued. A woman with a prosthetic leg showed off her hand cycle, reaching speeds that made the track team jealous. A blind athlete demonstrated goalball, throwing a ball with bells inside while the gym sat mesmerized. Each athlete moved with power that redefined what bodies could do. "One more game," Raina announced. "We need volunteers." Hands shot up everywhere, Preston's included. They played 3-on-3, athletes, students, and Eli in the middle of it all. When Eli sank his first basket, aided by a perfect pass from Raina, the gym exploded. 600 students on their feet, cheering for the kid they'd whispered about 20 minutes ago. Ava found herself crying. Not sad tears, but the kind that came when your heart expanded too fast to contain what it felt. Across the gym, Luke Carter caught her eye. He nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement between parents who understood that sometimes the best gift you could give your child was the chance to be seen differently. The assembly ended with every athlete signing autographs. Kids crowded around Eli, asking about his chair, his thoughts on the game, whether he'd joined the adaptive sports program. Preston waited until the crowd thinned, then approached. "That was cool," he said quietly. "The basketball thing." Eli studied him. "Yeah, it was." They didn't shake hands, didn't become instant friends, but something shifted in that moment, a crack in the wall that separated them. As students filed out, chattering excitedly about what they'd witnessed, Ava made her way to Luke Carter. "Thank you," she said, voice thick. "That was, overdue," Luke finished. "Every kid deserves to be the hero sometimes." The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the parking lot as Ava caught up with Luke near a battered blue pickup truck. The Paralympians were loading equipment into a convoy of vans, their voices carrying across the asphalt. "Mr. Carter." "Luke." She corrected herself. "What you did in there?" He shifted a gear bag from one shoulder to the other. "Kids needed to see something different. That's all." "That's all?" Ava's voice cracked slightly. "You just changed my son's entire world in 45 minutes, and that's all?" Luke's weathered face softened. "Your boy would have found his way. We just sped things up a bit." He nodded toward the school entrance where Eli had emerged, surrounded by the athletes. "Besides, they're the heroes here. I just drive the van. Mom, look at this." Eli's voice carried across the lot. Deshaun was adjusting a hand cycle to Eli's height, explaining the gears while a cluster of students gathered to watch. Preston hung at the edge of the group, hands in his pockets. "Lean forward when you climb," Deshaun demonstrated. "Power comes from your core, not just your arms." Eli's first attempt sent him wobbling. His second was steadier. By the third lap around the parking lot, he was flying, wheels singing against pavement. Students cheered. Someone filmed on their phone, but this time with admiration, not mockery. A girl with paint-stained fingers and wild curls broke from the crowd, jogging alongside Eli's cycle. "Nice form. I'm Hannah. My dad's the one who crashed your assembly." "Best crash ever," Eli panted between pushes. Hannah kept pace easily. "You should see him at home. He fixes cars and makes the world's worst pancakes, like historically bad. Scientists should study them." "I heard that, Hannah Rose," Luke called out. "Truth hurts, Dad." The banter continued as the Paralympians packed up. Each athlete made a point of saying goodbye to Eli personally. Raina left him with her practice schedule. "Tuesdays and Thursdays. Be there." As the vans pulled away, Hannah turned to Eli. "You like milkshakes? There's this place downtown that makes them so thick you need a spoon." "Ruby's Diner," Luke added, appearing beside them. "Best burgers in 3 counties." Ava hesitated. Corporate dinners and client entertainment she could handle, but this felt different, personal. "Please, Mom." Eli's face held more light than she'd seen in months. Ruby's Diner occupied a corner building that hadn't changed since 1952. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, and a jukebox that still played 45s. The dinner crowd was thin, a few families, an elderly couple sharing pie. "Corner booth," Luke directed. "Best view of Main Street." They slid in, Luke and Hannah on one side, Ava and Eli on the other. The waitress, a woman named Dolores with silver hair piled high, brought menus without being asked. "The usual, Lucas?" "×2. Hannah?" "Chocolate shake, extra whipped cream, and don't let Dad steal my fries." "I've never stolen a fry in my life," Luke protested. "Last Tuesday, 3 fries. I counted." Eli laughed, really laughed, for the first time all day. "Mom does the same thing. She thinks French fries don't have calories if they come from someone else's plate." "That's science," Ava defended. "Borrowed calories don't count." The food arrived in enormous portions. Burgers that required both hands, fries that spilled across the plate, milkshakes in frozen metal cups with extra in the mixing tin. Hannah pulled out her phone to show Eli photos of her art, murals she'd painted on abandoned buildings with the city's permission. "This one's my favorite." The screen showed a massive pair of wings painted on brick. People stand in front and look like angels. "Or demons," Eli suggested. "Depending on their mood." "Exactly. You get it," Hannah beamed. "Most people just see pretty wings." Luke talked about his time as an Army medic, careful to keep the stories light. How he'd learned to fix anything with duct tape and determination. How he'd met his first Paralympian at Walter Reed, a soldier who'd lost both legs but refused to stop competing. "Changed my whole perspective," he said, stealing one of Hannah's fries. She slapped his hand but smiled. "Came home and started volunteering with adaptive sports. Been doing it 12 years now." "And Mom?" Hannah asked Ava. "Eli says you run a company." Ava tensed slightly. "Healthcare technology. We make systems that help hospitals communicate better." "She's being modest," Eli interjected. "She built it from nothing. Started in our garage when I was 3. "While managing your medical stuff," Luke said quietly. It wasn't a question. Ava met his eyes. "You do what you have to do." "Yeah, you do." The understanding in his voice unknotted something in Ava's chest. No pity, no judgment, just recognition from someone who'd walked a parallel path. They stayed until the diner started closing. Hannah and Eli had moved on to discussing music, their phones out, sharing earbuds across the table. Luke told stories about small-town life that made Ava laugh until her sides hurt. "We should go," Ava finally said, noticing Dolores wiping down empty tables. "Same time next week?" Hannah asked hopefully. Eli looked at his mom with eyes that begged. "We'll see," Ava said, but her smile gave her away. The rented house sat quiet on Elm Street, a two-story colonial that came furnished and felt nothing like home. Yet tonight, as Ava helped Eli get ready for bed, the walls seemed less foreign. "Mom," Eli's voice was sleepy as she pulled up his covers. "Today was good." She smoothed his hair back. "Yeah, baby, it was. Do you think it'll stay good?" "I hope so." "Me too." His eyes were already closing. "I like them, Luke and Hannah. They're nice people. You smiled a lot tonight, real smiles." Ava's throat tightened. "Get some sleep. School tomorrow." She turned off the lamp, leaving his door cracked the way he liked it. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and breathed deeply. For the first time since returning to Maple Ridge, she felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Outside, October wind rattled the windows. Downtown, in a mansion on the hill, Charles Whitmore reviewed footage from the school assembly on his tablet, his jaw tight with calculation. But in the house on Elm Street, Ava Reynolds smiled in the darkness, unaware of the plans taking shape across town. 2 nights later, Ava stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the sleek black gown she hadn't worn in years. The fabric hugged her frame perfectly, professional, yet elegant. Downstairs, Grandma Jo entertained Eli with stories about Luke's childhood. "One time that boy tried to fix my washing machine with bubble gum and a coat hanger," Jo's voice carried up the stairs. "Water everywhere, like Noah's flood in my kitchen." Eli's laughter echoed through the house. At least he'd be happy tonight. Ava descended the stairs and Jo whistled. "Lord have mercy, you clean up nice." "It's just a fundraiser." "Honey, nothing's just anything when you look like that," Jo winked. "Those rich folks won't know what hit them." The Maple Ridge Country Club blazed with light. Valet attendants scrambled to park luxury cars, while couples in designer clothing climbed the stone steps. Ava handed over her keys, squared her shoulders, and entered the lion's den. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the ballroom. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and tiny foods that cost more per bite than most people's groceries. "Ms. Reynolds," Board President Margaret Ashworth glided over, diamonds glittering at her throat. "How wonderful you could join us." Ava accepted a champagne flute she didn't intend to drink. "Thank you for the invitation. We're all so excited about your STEM wing proposal. Charles Whitmore particularly wants to discuss the budget." Across the room, Charles held court near the bar. Silver-haired, immaculate in his tuxedo, he commanded attention without raising his voice. His wife Vivian, blonde and brittle, laughed at something another donor said. Preston stood nearby, uncomfortable in his formal wear, scrolling through his phone. Ava worked the room methodically. She discussed curriculum with the principal, facilities with the operations director, technology needs with teachers brave enough to attend. Every conversation moved her closer to her goal, a world-class STEM program that would include adaptive technology for students like Eli. Near the kitchen entrance, she noticed Maria Santos. The custodian wore a simple navy dress, probably borrowed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her son Mateo, maybe 6 years old, clung to her hand. His dark hair was slicked down, his clip-on tie crooked. Poor woman, Ava thought. Probably required to attend, but not really welcome. The evening progressed smoothly. Dinner was served, salmon or beef, portions artistic in their tininess. Speeches droned on about excellence and tradition. Ava mentally drafted her own presentation, scheduled for after dessert. Then it happened. Mateo had wandered away from his mother, who was helping clear plates despite being a guest. The boy wove between tables, drawn by the dessert display. He passed close to Charles Whitmore's table. Charles barely glanced down when small fingers tugged his sleeve. "Mommy says you're my daddy." The words rang out in a lull between the quartet's pieces. Clear, innocent, devastating. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Every head turned toward the little boy and the man frozen above him. Charles's face went from pale to crimson in seconds. Vivian's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Preston's phone clattered onto his plate. "What did you say?" Charles's voice was ice. Maria rushed forward, her face stricken. "Mateo, no baby, come here." But Mateo, confused by the attention, repeated himself. "She said you're my daddy. Are you?" The silence was suffocating. 300 of Ohio's wealthiest citizens held their collective breath. Charles stood slowly, his chair scraping against marble. This is absolutely false. A disgusting lie. "Please," Maria reached for her son, tears streaming. "He doesn't understand." "Get out," Charles's voice cut through her plea. "Both of you, now." "Charles," Vivian's voice shook. "Is it true?" Of course not. But his denial came too fast, too sharp. Vivian studied his face for a long moment. Then she walked out, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm. Preston started after his mother, stopped, looked at his father with something between disgust and devastation, then followed Vivian out. Board members exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Margaret Ashworth looked ready to faint. Donors pulled out phones, undoubtedly texting their lawyers, their publicists, their spouses. Charles turned on Maria. "If you spread these lies, I'll destroy you. You'll never work in this state again. I'll have you deported." "I'm a citizen," Maria whispered, clutching Mateo. "Then I'll find another way." His voice dropped, menacing. "You know what I'm capable of." Security appeared, 2 large men in black suits. They flanked Maria and Mateo, escorting them toward the exit. The little boy was crying now, confused and scared. Maria's shoulders shook with silent sobs. Ava stood frozen, her presentation notes crumpled in her hand. The STEM wing, Eli's future at the school, everything she'd planned, it all hung in the balance of this moment. Charles straightened his tie, attempting to salvage his composure. "I apologize for the disruption. Obviously, we'll be reviewing our guest list policies." But the damage was done. The gala dissolved into chaos. Donors made excuses to leave. Board members huddled in corners, whispering furiously. The quartet packed up their instruments. Ava set down her untouched champagne and walked out into the October night, her mind racing. The tremor that started in that ballroom would become an earthquake. She just didn't know yet how much it would shake loose. The next morning, Maple Ridge Prep buzzed like a kicked hive. In the hallways, by lockers, in bathroom corners, everyone whispered about the gala. "My mom says Charles Whitmore has 3 lawyers on retainer." The custodian lady's kid really does look like Preston if you think about it. "Shh, here comes Mrs. Henderson." Teachers hushed conversations with sharp looks, but their own speculation continued in the faculty lounge. The coffee tasted bitter with scandal. Preston moved through the halls like a ghost. His usual crew gave him space, not abandoning him exactly, but not knowing what to say either. He slumped in the back row of English class, hood up despite the dress code, staring at nothing. Eli wheeled past him twice. Both times Preston's jaw clenched, his fingers white-knuckled on his desk. The boy who'd laughed yesterday after tipping over in the sports chair had vanished, replaced by someone hollowed out and furious. "He looks terrible," Hannah murmured to Eli at lunch. Eli poked at his sandwich. "Yeah, you could talk to him?" "And say what? Sorry your dad's a jerk? He already knows that." By noon, Maria's absence was official. The supply closet stayed locked. The floors in the science wing went unmopped. A substitute custodian, hastily called in, didn't know where anything was. "Suspended pending investigation," the principal told concerned staff, but everyone knew what that meant. Charles Whitmore had made his call. Luke knocked on the apartment door in the Riverside complex, the part of town where paint peeled and playground equipment rusted. He balanced a box of groceries against his hip. Maria opened the door, eyes red-rimmed. "Luke? Heard you might need some help." She stepped aside, and he entered the small space. Matteo sat on the couch, watching cartoons with the volume low. The apartment was spotless but sparse. A few photos, a crucifix on the wall, toys in a neat basket. Luke set the groceries on the counter. Milk, bread, eggs, ground beef, pasta, basics. You didn't have to. Pastor Lila sent some too. There's a casserole from Grandma Jo in here somewhere. Maria's composure cracked. She pressed her palms against her eyes, shoulders shaking. Hey. Luke's voice was gentle. It's going to be okay. No, it's not. The words came out ragged. He'll destroy us. He always said he would if I ever... She stopped, glancing at Matteo. Luke waited. We were together years ago, before his marriage was completely... before I knew who he really was. She wiped her face with a dish towel. Just a few months. I was young, stupid. When I got pregnant, he gave me money to leave town. I came back last year because my mother got sick. I never meant for Matteo to know, to say anything, but he overheard me praying one night, asking God to forgive his father. Has Charles ever acknowledged? Never. No support, no contact, just threats if I ever told anyone. She looked at her son. I don't need his money, but my job, this apartment, if he takes those... A second knock interrupted them. Ava stood in the doorway, professional even in jeans and a sweater. I hope you don't mind. Luke texted me your address. Maria shrank back. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm so sorry about the gala. Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. Ava's voice was firm. I have contacts, lawyers who do pro bono work. DNA testing can prove... No. Maria's response was immediate. You don't understand. Charles Whitmore owns this town. The judges, the police chief, the newspaper. Even if I proved it, he'd find a way to punish us. Immigration might not be able to touch me, but child services could. They could say I'm an unfit mother, take Matteo. That's not... You haven't lived here long enough. Maria's voice was flat. You don't know what he's capable of. That evening, Ava's phone rang as she reviewed STEM wing blueprints in her home office. Margaret Ashworth's name appeared on the screen. Ava, I'm calling as a courtesy. The board president's voice was strained. Charles has made his position clear. Which is? The Inclusion Day event with Mr. Carter and the Paralympic athletes must be canceled. He feels it's inappropriate given recent tensions. Ava set down her pen. Inappropriate? It's a sports demonstration. He's threatening to withdraw his donation, the entire technology lab funding, $3 million. Because of a wheelchair basketball game? Because of associations. Margaret paused. He also suggested that if you continue to support this event, or Maria Santos, the board might need to reconsider the STEM wing entirely. He can't. He can, he will. Ava, I know this is difficult, but think of the greater good. The STEM wing will help hundreds of students over the years. Is one event worth losing that? This isn't about one event. It's about my son. About every kid who... I understand, but the board meets Thursday. We need your answer by then. The line went dead. Ava stood in her darkened office, staring at her reflection in the window. The woman looking back wore designer clothes, had the right degrees, the perfect resume, the successful CEO who'd climbed every ladder, broken every ceiling, but beneath that was just a mother whose son came home with tire marks on his palms from being spun against his will, a mother who'd watched hope bloom in his eyes when those athletes rolled in. Her phone buzzed, a text from Eli. Mom, can Deshaun teach me that wheelie trick Saturday? She closed her eyes. The STEM wing meant resources, opportunities, a future for kids like Eli. But at what cost? In the window's reflection, she looked like someone standing at a crossroads, in the dark, unable to see where either path led. The church gym smelled of floor, wax, and determination. Wheelchairs squeaked against polished wood as athletes ran drills, their voices echoing off the high ceiling. Ava stood in the doorway watching Luke spot a young woman transferring from her everyday chair to a racing model. You came. Luke straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. I needed to see this, to understand what we're fighting for. They moved to the bleachers. Below them, Eli gripped the handles of a hand cycle, face scrunched in concentration. Deshaun, a former Marine with prosthetic legs, coached him through the motion. Push and pull, like you're rowing. Feel the rhythm. Eli's first attempts were jerky, uncoordinated. The cycle wobbled. You got this, Hannah called from where she sketched on a tablet. Remember what you told me about drone controls? Same principle, different machine. Something clicked. Eli's movement smoothed out. The cycle rolled forward, gaining speed. His face transformed, jaw relaxed, eyes bright. When he completed a full lap, the gym erupted in cheers. That's my boy, Ava whispered. Luke studied her profile. The board called. They want me to cancel Inclusion Day. Charles is threatening to pull $3 million in funding. She kept her eyes on Eli. My corporate board is watching too. If I lose the STEM wing after promising it, they'll question my judgment, everything I've built. What do you want to do? I want to protect my son. I want to keep my career. I want to punch Charles Whitmore in his smug face. She laughed, bitter. I want impossible things. No, you want right things. Below, Eli high-fived May, a swimmer with one arm who'd just shown him how to corner without losing speed. Their laughter rang pure, unconscious of anything but the moment. Luke leaned forward, elbows on knees. Lost my wife 6 years ago. Car accident on black ice, coming home from her shift at the hospital. Hannah was 10. Ava turned to him. For months, I was just empty, going through motions. Hannah stopped painting, stopped talking much. We were drowning on dry land. He rubbed his jaw. Then Pastor Lila dragged me to referee a wheelchair basketball game. Didn't want to go. Felt wrong to be around people choosing joy when I couldn't find any. What changed? This kid may be 15, born without legs. He scored 12 points and talked trash the whole game. After, I asked him how he stayed so positive. You know what he said? I don't waste time wanting legs I never had. I've got arms that work and a mouth that won't shut up. That's enough to build on. Luke gestured at the athletes. Started coaching the next week. Hannah came to watch, then to help. These athletes didn't give us pity or empty promises. They just showed us that broken doesn't mean done. Raina, the team captain, executed a perfect spinning shot from her chair. Preston's cruel laughter from days ago seemed like something from another lifetime. Your son, Luke continued, he's finding himself here, not the kid others see, not even the kid you protect, the real Eli. As if to prove the point, Eli called out to a younger boy struggling with his prosthetic. Hey, try shifting your weight back, like when you're gaming and leaning into a turn. The boy tried it. Succeeded. They fist-bumped. That's leadership, Ava breathed. That's your answer. She watched her son, really watched him. Not the boy who needed surgeries and accommodations, not the target of mockery, but Eli himself, clever, funny, kind. Surrounded by athletes who saw wheels as wings, limits as launching pads. Charles will destroy the STEM wing. Maybe my career. Maybe. But what's Eli learning if you back down? That power wins? That his dignity has a price tag? Hannah approached with her tablet. Mrs. Reynolds, look. She'd drawn Eli on the hand cycle, but with wings sprouting from the wheels, his face radiant with speed. For the Inclusion Day posters. If we still, we will. The words came out solid, certain. We absolutely will. Luke smiled, the first full smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his weathered face. I'll need help, Ava said. The board meets Thursday. Charles will have his lawyers, his connections. You'll have us. The team, the church, the parents who are too scared to speak up alone. Grandma Jo appeared with a cooler. Hydration break. And I brought cookies because champions need sugar. The athletes swarmed her with the enthusiasm of teenagers. Eli rolled over, face flushed with exertion. Mom, did you see? I did 3 laps without stopping. I saw everything, baby. I'm not a baby. No, she touched his cheek. You're not. That night, after lasagna and homework, after shower and stretches, Eli lay in bed while Ava sat beside him. His breathing had already deepened toward sleep. Long day tomorrow? He mumbled. Every day's long lately. Mom, those kids at school, Preston and them, they're scared of something. What makes you say that? Nobody's that mean unless they're scared. His eyes fluttered closed. Deshaun told me that. Said his dad was meanest right before he figured out Deshaun was still his son, just different. Ava held her son's hand, the same hand that had gripped hand cycle bars with such determination, these fingers that built drones, that sketched designs, that reached out to help others. We'll fight this together, she whispered to his sleeping form, whatever comes. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Thursday's board meeting loomed. Charles Whitmore had money, influence, generations of power. But she had something stronger, a gym full of warriors, a son finding his wings, and the kind of resolve that only comes from finally seeing the battle clearly. Morning light streamed through the church gym windows as Luke spread blueprints across a folding table. 20 Paralympians gathered close, along with Pastor Lila, Grandma Joe, and a dozen volunteers wearing work boots and determination. Inclusion Day, 2 weeks from Saturday, Luke announced. We need wheelchair racing lanes in the parking lot, basketball stations in both gyms, and, he tapped the blueprint, temporary ramps at every entrance. Raina, the team captain, rolled forward. My college has portable sport chairs we can borrow, 20 units. I've got a contact at the medical supply company, Deshaun added. They'll donate safety gear. Pastor Lila raised her weathered hand. The women's ministry will handle refreshments, bake sale out front to raise funds. Donation jars at every local business, Grandma Joe chimed in. Already talked to the hardware store, the diner, the pharmacy. Nobody said no. Ava shifted, calculator in hand. Printing costs for flyers, posters, programs, I'll cover those personally. That's generous, but it's necessary. Her corporate training kicked in. We need professional materials. This can't look like a charity case. It has to look like what it is, a celebration. May, a Paralympic swimmer, studied the schedule. We should include an education component, not just games. Let kids ask real questions. Good. Raw honesty beats polished speeches. Luke turned to Eli. Speaking of which, we need someone to design the event poster. Eli's eyes widened. Me? You've got the best drone footage of the school. You know design software. You interested? Yes, absolutely yes. Eli spun his chair in excitement, then caught himself. I mean, I'd be honored to contribute to the marketing materials. Everyone laughed. Ava ruffled his hair. Near the gym doorway, a shadow moved. Preston Whitmore stood half-hidden, watching. His usual swagger had deflated into something smaller. Hannah noticed first, her artist's eye, catching his hesitation. She walked over slowly, the way you'd approach a spooked animal. Hey. Preston stiffened. We could use help with the sound system. You're good with tech stuff, right? His jaw worked. My dad would... I'm not asking your dad. For a moment, Preston's mask slipped. The boy underneath looked lost. Then Charles's training kicked back in. Spine straight, chin up, walls rebuilt. I have to go. He fled before Hannah could respond. Through the window, they watched him bike away, pedaling hard against nothing. That evening, Ava's kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken and possibility. Luke and Hannah sat at the worn wooden table, while Eli proudly displayed his poster sketch on his tablet. See, I made the wheels look like they're in motion, and the tagline is, roll with it, because it works literally and figuratively. It's perfect, Hannah said. The colors pop without being childish. My marketing team couldn't do better, Ava agreed, serving salad. And I've seen their portfolios. Luke helped with plates, moving around Ava's kitchen with practiced ease. Their hands brushed, reaching for the serving spoon. Neither pulled away immediately. This reminds me of family dinners growing up, Hannah said. Mom always made Sunday special, church, then pot roast, then board games until dark. A shadow crossed Luke's face. She'd have loved this. The planning, the purpose. Sarah never could resist a good cause. Tell me about her, Ava said softly. Luke set down his fork. Pediatric nurse. Worked NICU, the preemie ward. Came home every shift talking about her fighters, these tiny babies who refused to give up. She'd say, "Luke, 2 pounds of human taught me more about courage than any soldier." She sounds amazing. She was. Also stubborn as a mule and couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. He smiled at the memory, but when she sang Hannah to sleep, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. Hannah reached for his hand. Still is. I hear it sometimes, in dreams. Ava watched them, this father and daughter who'd rebuilt after breaking. You've done well with her, Luke. Sarah would be proud. Some days I'm not sure. Single dad to a teenage girl, I'm basically winging it with prayer and whatever Mom tells me to do. That's all any of us do, Ava admitted. Present competent fronts while internally screaming, "What now?" Eli laughed. Mom, you literally have spreadsheets for my medication schedules. Spreadsheets are how I manage anxiety, thank you very much. They cleared dishes together, movement synchronized without discussion. Luke washed, Ava dried, kids put away, domestic choreography that felt both new and inevitable. In Afghanistan, Luke said quietly, hands in soapy water, we had this medic who lost both legs to an IED. 6 months later, he was back on base with prosthetics, training new medics. Someone asked how he stayed positive. He said, "I can still save lives. The legs were just transportation." Boy, is he one of your athletes now? Coaches basketball in Seattle, brings his team out twice a year to scrimmage with us, destroys us every time. Ava folded the dish towel precisely. How do you do it? Find hope in all that loss? You look for the helpers. Mr. Rogers was right about that. In every disaster, someone's helping. You focus there, not on the destruction. Through the window, porch lights dotted the neighborhood like earthbound stars. Across town, Preston Whitmore sat alone in his bedroom, laptop screen reflecting off his face. The bullying video played on loop, his own voice mocking, his hand spinning Eli's wheels. Each replay carved shame deeper. Downstairs, his father's voice boomed through the floorboards. "I don't care what it costs. That woman keeps her mouth shut, or we bury her. Find something, anything. Everyone has dirt." Preston closed the laptop. In his desk drawer, hidden under old homework, lay a flyer Hannah had dropped. Roll with it day, in Eli's cheerful design. He traced the wheels with one finger, remembering how it felt to tip over in the sport chair. How the Paralympians had laughed with him, not at him. How different that laughter sounded. His phone buzzed. Another message from his lacrosse buddies, planning tomorrow's harassment campaign. Preston deleted it without reading. Outside his window, the town slept peacefully, unaware that fault lines were forming in its foundations. That power built on fear was already beginning to crack. 2 weeks had transformed Maple Ridge Prep's gym into something magical. Bright banners reading "Roll with it" stretched between basketball hoops. Ramps led to every entrance. The bleachers groaned under the weight of the crowd. Students, parents, townsfolk who'd never set foot in the prep school before, and 3 local news crews jockeying for the best angles. "Ladies and gentlemen," Coach Reyna's voice boomed through the microphone, "welcome to our first Inclusion Day." The Paralympians took center court in a choreographed entrance that drew gasps. Wheelchairs spun in perfect synchronization. Prosthetic blades flashed under gym lights. 2 athletes on crutches performed a complex weaving pattern that looked more like dancing than walking. First up, wheelchair basketball. The demonstration game moved like liquid lightning. Deshaun's chair pivoted on one wheel as he sank a 3-pointer. May blocked a shot while moving backward at full speed. The crowd's energy built with each play. Students on their feet, parents recording on phones. "Who wants to race?" Deshawn called out, wheeling to the sideline where hand cycles waited. Eli's hand shot up. The crowd parted as he rolled forward, face flushed with excitement. Deshawn helped him transfer to the hand cycle, adjusting straps with practiced efficiency. 3 laps around the court, Deshawn announced. "And I'm not going easy on you, rookie." They lined up. Hannah held the starting flag, her paint-stained fingers steady. The flag dropped. Eli pumped his arms, muscles he'd been training for 2 weeks, responding smoothly. Deshawn stayed just ahead, close enough to push Eli harder but not discourage him. The crowd roared with each lap. Students who'd whispered behind Eli's back now screamed his name. On the final turn, Deshawn eased slightly, imperceptible to most, but Ava saw it. Eli surged forward, crossing the finish line half a wheel ahead. The gym erupted. "Natural athlete," Deshawn announced, lifting Eli's arm like a boxing champion. "2 weeks ago, this kid couldn't complete 1 lap. Look at him now." Eli beamed, chest heaving, sweat dripping. Real sweat from real effort, not the cold perspiration of fear he'd worn that first day. Hannah worked her face-painting station, turning students into tigers, butterflies, and superheroes. A line of kids waited patiently, no pushing, no complaints. Parents chatted in clusters, voices warm with discovery. Ava moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. Her corporate polish served her well, but underneath hummed genuine joy. This wasn't about tax write-offs or good PR. This was about her son's light returning. "Ms. Reynolds," a reporter pushed forward, "can you comment on Charles Whitmore's absence today?" "I'm focused on who's here, not who isn't." The adaptive fencing demonstration drew fresh awe. Athletes in wheelchairs wielded foils with precision that made the school's official fencing team look clumsy. One athlete, missing an arm, fought with modifications that turned supposed disadvantage into unexpected angles of attack. Preston Whitmore stood in the shadows near the emergency exit, baseball cap pulled low. He'd been watching for 2 hours, body rigid with internal war. The basketball demonstration resumed. Athletes transferred from everyday chairs to sport chairs with casual grace, explaining the differences: lower seats, angled wheels, no armrests. They invited students to try. Preston stepped forward. The gym quieted. Students turned. Preston's friends looked confused. His father's absence felt suddenly larger. "Can I?" Preston's voice cracked. "Can I try again?" Deshawn's face split into a grin. "My man, get over here." Preston lowered himself into the sport chair, remembering instructions from 2 weeks ago. Push the wheels out, lean into turns, trust the chair's design. He tried to pivot and immediately tipped sideways, landing hard on the mat. Laughter rippled through the crowd, not cruel, but nervous. Then Eli was there, reaching down. "Push from your core when you get up. Here, grab my armrest." Preston looked up at the kid he'd tormented. Eli's face held no mockery, only encouragement. Preston grabbed the offered support, hauling himself upright. Their eyes met, bully and bullied, both just boys trying to figure out the world. "I'm sorry," Preston said suddenly. The microphone on Deshawn's shirt picked it up, broadcasting through the gym. "Eli, what I did was wrong. The video, the mockery, all of it. I'm sorry." Silence stretched like held breath. "You were scared," Eli said simply. "Fear makes people cruel sometimes. I forgive you." The applause started slowly. Hannah first, then Luke, then spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Teachers dabbed eyes. Parents clutched their children tighter. The news cameras captured everything. Preston tried the chair again, staying upright this time. Eli wheeled beside him, offering tips. 2 boys, different worlds, finding common ground on polished wood. By evening, the gym glowed golden with setting sun through high windows. The local news anchor interviewed students, athletes, and parents. Donation jars overflowed, not with large checks from wealthy donors, but with crumpled 5s and 10s from working families. The church bake sale table sat empty, every cookie and pie sold. Ava and Luke stood together near the entrance, shoulders touching, watching Eli demonstrate his hand cycle for a group of elementary kids. "Maybe this really can change everything," Ava whispered. The crowd began chanting, softly at first, then building. "Eli, Eli, Eli." Her son raised both arms in victory, and the town roared approval. The hammer strikes echoed across Maple Ridge Prep's front entrance. 3 days after Inclusion Day, volunteers swarmed the steps like worker bees. Luke measured twice, cut once, while church members held lumber steady. The ramp took shape. Not a temporary plywood afterthought, but permanent concrete with proper rails. "Little to the left," Luke called to his helper. "Perfect." Recess had transformed. Where clusters once formed by social rank, kids now mixed freely around the hand cycles. The PE teacher had convinced the principal to order 3 more. A waiting list stretched 2 weeks long. "My turn next." A 3rd grader bounced on her toes. Eli demonstrated the hand positions again, patient as Deshaun had been with him. "See, push down and forward, not just out. It's about rhythm." 3 boys who'd laughed at his wheelchair 2 weeks ago now peppered him with questions about gear ratios. One admitted his uncle used a chair, another mentioned his grandmother's walker. Barriers crumbled with each shared story. Preston arrived at the church basement Thursday evening, baseball cap low, shoulders hunched. The reading program met in a small room behind the kitchen, away from judgment. 4 other students already sat around the table, kids Luke recognized as struggling readers who'd been too ashamed to seek help. "Welcome," Luke said simply, sliding a book across the table. "We start wherever you are." Preston's hands shook as he opened the cover. The words swam like fish, refusing to be caught. The boy." Preston stumbled, face reddening. "Take your time. Nobody's racing." Luke's voice held the same steady calm he'd used treating wounded soldiers. No pity, no frustration, just presence. Preston tried again. One word, then another. The other kids didn't laugh. They knew this struggle intimately. "My dad says reading is easy," Preston whispered after 20 minutes. "Says I'm just lazy." "Your dad's wrong," Luke replied. "Dyslexia's got nothing to do with intelligence or effort. Your brain just processes differently. We'll find what works for you." Friday night's potluck filled the church fellowship hall with steam and chatter. Tables groaned under casseroles, cornbread, and Grandma Joe's famous apple crisp. Families who'd never mixed mingled freely, united by full plates and fuller hearts. Grandma Joe held court near the dessert table, regaling anyone who'd listen with tales of Luke's childhood. "This boy once rescued 17 tadpoles from a drying pond," she announced, eyes twinkling. "Carried them home in his baseball cap, begged me for mason jars, had a whole amphibian hospital in our garage." "Grandma," Luke groaned, but his protest lacked heat. Pastor Lila organized take-home containers for Maria, who couldn't attend. The suspension still held, Charles's lawyers making sure she stayed away from school property. But the community had rallied, babysitting Mateo, bringing groceries, offering odd jobs. "Third casserole for Maria," Pastor Lila announced, aluminum pan heavy with shepherd's pie. "Who's driving tonight?" "I will," Ava volunteered, surprising herself. The CEO, who once kept careful distance, now jumped at chances to help. Hannah and Eli sat together at the youth table, Hannah showing him her latest painting on her phone, a mural design featuring interlocking wheels. "For the gym wall," she explained, "if they approve it." "It's incredible," Eli breathed, then caught himself. "I mean, it's cool, really cool." Hannah bumped his shoulder playfully. "Thanks, brother." Brother, the word made Eli's chest expand. He'd been an only child his whole life, never imagining siblings could be chosen rather than born. Ava watched from across the room, noting her son's joy. Luke appeared at her elbow with 2 cups of coffee. "He's different," she said softly. Lighter, somehow. Kids are resilient when given the chance. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their children laugh. Luke's cologne, soap, and sawdust had become familiar, comforting. Thank you, Ava said, for everything. You don't need to keep thanking me. I do, though. You changed our world. Luke turned to face her fully. You changed mine, too. The moment stretched between them, delicate as spun glass. Then Grandma Joe's voice boomed across the hall, announcing seconds on dessert, and the spell broke. But something had shifted, a door opening to possibility. Later, Ava walked home under October stars, Eli rolling beside her, recounting Hannah's jokes. The night air carried wood smoke and promise. Her phone stayed silent in her pocket. No corporate crises, no board demands, just peace. Miles away, in a study that cost more than most houses, Charles Whitmore sat alone. The local news played on his laptop for the 5th time. There was Preston, apologizing publicly. There was that woman, Ava Reynolds, standing triumphant. And worst of all, there was proof that the town had chosen them over him. His Scotch glass reflected amber light as he opened a new browser window. His lawyer picked up on the first ring. Find something, Charles said. On Luke Carter, the Reynolds woman. Anyone involved. I want them destroyed. Sir, that might... I don't pay you to argue, I pay you to win. The call ended. Charles stared at the replay. His son choosing strangers over family, his town choosing righteousness over wealth. His fist clenched around the glass until crystal cracked. 3 days passed in golden rhythm before the storm hit. The video appeared first on the prep school's parent Facebook group at 7 Monday morning. By 7:30, it had spread to Twitter. By 8, local news had picked it up. The footage looked damning. Luke's voice, choppy and edited, "We need this to look real. Make sure they spin the chair. Get it on camera." Cut to Preston pushing Eli. Cut to Luke handing cash to a teenager. Cut to him saying, "This changes everything." The editing was slick, professional. Timestamps removed, context erased, truth twisted into weapon. Luke discovered it when Deshaun called. "Coach, you need to see this." Luke's stomach dropped as he watched on his phone screen. His words, from different conversations across different days, stitched together like Frankenstein's monster. The cash? Payment for basketball camp registration. The make sure they spin the chair? Instructions for a wheelchair maintenance demo. But who would believe that now? His phone exploded. Texts, calls, notifications cascading like an avalanche. The prep school's number appeared. "Mr. Carter, the board needs you to cease all activities immediately. Don't come to campus." The line went dead. Charles's PR firm worked with surgical precision. Within hours, op-eds appeared questioning Luke's motives. Anonymous sources claimed he'd staged everything for attention, using a disabled child as prop. The narrative spread like oil on water, slick, dark, impossible to contain. Donors pulled back first. The local hardware store that promised lumber for ramps called to postpone. The restaurant planning to cater next month's event canceled. Even the church received angry calls demanding Luke's removal from youth programs. Ava was in a budget meeting when her assistant knocked urgently. "You need to see this." The video played on her laptop. Her coffee turned to acid in her stomach. She knew Luke, knew his character, his heart, but the editing was convincing, devastating. Her corporate phone buzzed. The board chair. "Ava, we need to talk." "It's not true. The video's edited." Doesn't matter if it's true. Perception is reality. Our shareholders are asking questions. You need to distance yourself immediately. From what? From standing up for my son? From scandal. From anything that threatens the company's reputation. We've called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Be prepared to explain your position. The call ended. Ava's hands trembled. Everything she'd built over 20 years, her career, her reputation, her ability to provide for Eli, balanced on a knife's edge. At Maple Ridge Prep, the cafeteria buzzed with poison. Parents who'd cheered at Inclusion Day now demanded answers. How could the school let this happen? Who else was involved? Was the Reynolds boy part of the scam? Preston sat frozen at his usual table, watching his father's handiwork destroy everything good from the past weeks. When someone asked if he'd been paid too, he fled to the bathroom and vomited. The prep school board convened an emergency session at 4 o'clock. The verdict came swift and merciless. All Inclusion Day activities suspended indefinitely. The wheelchair ramps project canceled. Luke Carter banned from campus. And Ava's STEM wing donation under review. Maria learned about the scandal from her neighbor, who showed her the video on a cracked phone screen. "This is the man who's been helping you?" Maria's heart shattered. Luke had brought groceries, found her cleaning work, never asked for anything in return. Now Charles had destroyed him too. The pattern was clear. Anyone who challenged Charles Whitmore got crushed. She clutched Mateo tighter, wondering if they should simply disappear. Start over in another town, another state. Somewhere Charles's reach couldn't follow. Eli heard the news at school. Whispers followed him down hallways. The new friends who'd gathered around him after Inclusion Day kept their distance, unsure what to believe. Hannah found him crying in the accessible bathroom, shoulders shaking. "It's lies," she said fiercely. "All of it." "Doesn't matter. They believe it. Then we make them see the truth." "How? Your dad's banned. My mom might lose her job. Everything's ruined because of me." "Stop. This isn't your fault." But Eli was already rolling away, that newfound confidence crumbling like sandcastles at high tide. That evening, Ava found Eli in his room faced away from the door. "Honey, we need to talk." "Do I have to leave school again?" The question broke her heart. "We'll figure this out." "That's what you said last time, and the time before." She had no answer that wouldn't sound hollow. Her phone buzzed with another email from corporate legal. Subject line, "Emergency meeting, tomorrow morning." The message was clear. Choose between Luke and her career. Choose between her son's happiness and their financial security. Across town, Luke sat in his darkened garage, tools abandoned on the workbench. Hannah had tried to talk to him, but he'd sent her to Grandma Joe's. He couldn't bear her seeing him like this, defeated, ashamed. 20 years of service, years of building trust, helping kids, never asking for recognition, destroyed in hours by edited footage and wealthy lies. His phone sat silent. The Paralympians hadn't called, probably advised by their sponsors to keep distance. The school had made their position clear. Even Pastor Lila seemed unsure what to believe. Luke clicked off the garage light and sat in darkness, head bowed, wondering if good intentions had ever been enough against money and power. The storm had broken. Morning would bring the reckoning. The school board's conference room smelled of leather and judgment. Luke sat alone at one end of the polished table while 5 board members studied him like specimen under glass. "Mr. Carter, the video clearly shows—" "The video shows lies." Luke kept his voice steady. "Edited lies." Charles Whitmore leaned back in his chair, diamond cufflinks catching the light. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying someone doctored that footage." "Someone." Charles's smile could freeze blood. How convenient. No proof, just accusations from a man who exploited children for, what was it, fame? Money? "I've never taken a cent." "The Paralympians, did they pay you to arrange this publicity stunt?" Luke's jaw tightened. Those athletes volunteered their time. They came because they believe in these kids. "Which kids? The ones you allegedly paid to bully the Reynolds boy?" "That's insane." "Is it?" Another board member, a woman with severe glasses, tapped her tablet. "We've received 17 complaints from parents. They feel manipulated, deceived." Luke's hands gripped the table edge. 20 years of service to this community, and they believed edited lies over his character. But then, money had always spoken louder than truth in rooms like this. Across town, Ava faced her own tribunal through a laptop screen. 6 corporate board members stared from their video windows, faces carved from disapproval. Ava, we need damage control. Issue a statement distancing yourself and the company from this Carter individual. I won't lie about a good man. No one's asking you to lie. Simply clarify that he acted independently, without your knowledge or endorsement. But I did endorse... Ava? The board chair's voice cut sharp. Our stock dropped 3 points this morning. 3 points, because of association with this scandal. It's not a scandal. It's a smear campaign. Perception is reality in business. You know this. She did know. Had played this game for 20 years, navigating corporate politics with surgical precision. But this was different. This was about Eli's dignity, Luke's honor. I need time to investigate. You have 24 hours. Either issue the statement or we'll convene to discuss your future with the company. The call ended. Ava stared at the blank screen, her reflection showing a woman she barely recognized, hollow-eyed, trapped between 2 impossible choices. In a cramped apartment across the tracks, Maria's hands shook as she read the eviction notice. 30 days, no explanation needed. Month-to-month tenants had no rights against landlords with lawyers. She'd started packing immediately, folding Mateo's few clothes into garbage bags while he played with toy cars, oblivious. No job meant no new apartment. No references meant no cleaning work. Charles had made sure of that with a few phone calls. A knock interrupted her spiral. Hannah Carter stood in the doorway, arms full of grocery bags. Mrs. Santos, I brought dinner. We don't need... Pride stuck in Maria's throat. Please, Mom would have wanted... Hannah's mother had died 3 years ago, but the girl still invoked her memory like a guardian angel. She always said the church takes care of its own. Maria let her in. Hannah unpacked soup, bread, milk, basics that would last days. She didn't mention the eviction notice visible on the counter, but her eyes lingered on the packed boxes. You're not alone, Hannah said quietly. We won't let you disappear. After Hannah left, Maria held Mateo close, tears silent against his dark hair. How many women like her had Charles destroyed? How many had vanished without anyone noticing? At the Whitmore mansion, crystal shattered against marble. You apologized? To that crippled kid? In public? Preston stood frozen as his father raged, whiskey fumes and fury filling the study. Dad, I just thought... You don't think. You're weak, pathetic, can't even read properly, and now you're sympathizing with losers? Eli's not a loser. The slap came fast, stinging more from shock than force. Charles had never hit him before, never needed to. Words had always been weapon enough. You're a Whitmore. Act like it, or I'll find a son who can. Preston ran. Out the door, down the driveway, into darkness. His feet carried him through town on autopilot until he stood outside Luke's garage, breath clouding in the cold air. The light was off, but he knocked anyway. Luke answered in yesterday's clothes, looking older, defeated. Preston? What? Can you still help me? With reading? With... Preston's voice cracked. With everything? Luke studied the boy's face, saw the red mark on his cheek, the desperation in his eyes. This was Charles's son, the boy who'd tormented Eli. Logic said to close the door. Instead, Luke stepped aside. Come in. The garage was cluttered but warm. Luke found a blanket, made up the couch. My dad's going to destroy you, Preston whispered. Already has. I could tell people the truth, about the video, about everything. Could you? Preston's silence was answer enough. They both knew the price of defying Charles Whitmore. Stay as long as you need, Luke said, clicking off the light. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. But lying in his own bed, Luke wondered if tomorrow would bring anything but more loss. His reputation, his work, his ability to help, all crumbling. How long before he had nothing left to offer? How long before the good guys stopped believing they could win? Luke's kitchen table groaned under the weight of unopened envelopes. Final notice, past due, second warning. The red stamps blurred together as exhaustion pulled at his eyes. "Dad, you need to eat something." Hannah set down a sandwich he hadn't asked for. Peanut butter and jelly, same thing she'd made when her mother was dying, when words were too heavy and simple gestures were all they had. "Can't afford to lose this contract, Hannah. It's half our income." "We'll manage." "With what? My stellar reputation?" Bitterness crept into his voice, foreign and sharp. Hannah's hand covered his. 16 years old, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who'd already lost enough to know what really mattered. "Mom always said the darkest hour is just before dawn, I know." Luke squeezed her fingers, but sometimes it just stays dark. The knock came soft, almost apologetic. Pastor Lila didn't wait for an answer, pushing through with a casserole dish and the scent of apple pie. "Figured you'd forget to eat." "We're fine, Pastor." "Course you are. That's why you're sitting here looking like Job after the boils." She unpacked her offerings with practiced efficiency. "Hannah, honey, heat this up. Your father needs real food." While Hannah busied herself at the stove, Pastor Lila settled across from Luke, her weathered hands folded over his bills without comment. "You know what I love about truth?" Luke waited. Pastor Lila's sermons came whether you asked or not. "It's patient. Lies, they're flashy, quick. They burn bright and fast. But truth? Truth just keeps existing, quiet-like, until someone's brave enough to speak it. Charles owns this town. Charles owns buildings. Big difference." Another knock interrupted them. May stood in the doorway, still in her training jacket, prosthetic leg gleaming under the porch light. "Luke, got something you need to see." She held out a flash drive like it was made of gold. "What is this?" "Remember, my cousin works for the news station." She was reviewing raw footage from Inclusion Day for a follow-up piece. Found something interesting. May's smile was sharp as a blade. "The unedited stuff, before Charles's people got creative." Luke's hands shook as he took the drive. "May, just watch it. All of it. The timestamp shows when that bribery footage was actually shot. 2 hours after the event ended, with paid extras." Pastor Lila's eyes gleamed. Truth's got a way of surfacing, doesn't it? Across town, Maria Santos stood outside Ava's office building, courage and terror warring in her chest. The security guard recognized her. She'd cleaned these floors for 3 years before Charles got her fired from here too. "Mrs. Reynolds is expecting me." The elevator ride felt endless, each floor adding weight to her decision. By the time she reached the executive level, her legs trembled. Ava met her at the door, professional mask replaced with genuine concern. "Maria, come in. Sit." The office was all glass and steel, but Ava had added touches: photos of Eli, a hand-painted mug, a small cross on the bookshelf. "I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "The test. DNA." Maria's accent thickened with emotion. "I want to prove Charles is Mateo's father." "Maria, he'll come after you harder." "Oh, he already took everything. My job, my home, my dignity." Maria's spine straightened. "But Mateo deserves truth. And maybe other women he's hurt will see they're not alone." Ava studied her for a long moment. This quiet woman who'd cleaned their toilets and served their drinks, showing more courage than boardrooms full of executives. "I know lawyers, discreet ones. We can have results within a week." "I can't pay." You won't need to." They sat in silence, two mothers bound by the fierce need to protect their children from powerful men who thought they owned the world. In Eli's room, Hannah perched on the edge of his bed, sketchbook in hand. "Can't sleep?" "Keep thinking about tomorrow. What if we have to leave? What if Mom loses her job? What if dragons attack the school?" Despite everything, Eli cracked a smile. "That's ridiculous." "No more ridiculous than letting Charles Whitmore win." Hannah started sketching as she talked. "You know what I love about wheels?" "What?" "They're meant to roll forward. Even when the path is rough, they keep finding a way." Her pencil moved across paper, creating a dragon in a wheelchair, breathing fire at a tower labeled Injustice. "That's amazing. You're amazing. And tomorrow, We're going to prove it. Eli's eyes grew heavy as Hannah kept drawing, adding knights with prosthetic legs and queens with mobility aids, a whole kingdom of people who refused to be stopped. Back in his garage, Luke slid the flash drive into his laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. Files loaded slowly, hours of footage, timestamps clear as day. His breath caught. There it was. The bribery scene, shot at 8:47 p.m., long after everyone had gone home. The same kids who'd been paid were drinking coffee, laughing about their acting gigs, completely unaware they were being recorded. "Hannah? Hannah, come see this." Across town, Ava lit a candle on her desk. The flame flickered, casting shadows on the wall, but holding steady against the darkness. God, let the truth win. The prayer felt small against Charles's empire, but sometimes small things started avalanches. Sometimes David did beat Goliath. Sometimes wheels did crush mountains. Dawn broke gray over Maple Ridge, matching the mood hanging over the town. Luke arrived at the church before anyone else, clutching his laptop like a lifeline. The flash drive felt heavier than it should in his pocket. Pastor Lila already had coffee brewing, the rich smell filling the small office. "Couldn't sleep either?" "Haven't slept right since this started." Luke set up the laptop on her desk. "But this might change everything." Ava arrived minutes later, professional armor firmly in place despite the early hour. May followed, still in workout gear from morning training. "Show me." Luke clicked play. The timestamp glowed in the corner, 8:47 p.m. The school gym, supposedly empty hours after Inclusion Day ended. But there was movement. Charles's assistant, a slick man in an expensive suit, handing cash to two teenagers Luke didn't recognize. "Say it again, but look more guilty this time," the man instructed. The teen cleared his throat. "Yeah, that mechanic guy paid us $50 each to mess with a wheelchair kid. Make it look worse than it was." "Perfect. Now you," pointing to the other teen, "look shocked, like you can't believe he'd do that." They ran through it 3 more times, each take more polished. The fixer never noticed the security camera catching everything from a different angle. "Sweet Lord," Pastor Lila's hand covered her mouth. "They planned it all." Ava's phone was already out. "Jennifer, it's Ava. I need you to see something. Today." Her attorney friend agreed to meet within the hour. As Ava hung up, her professional mask cracked slightly. "We got him." "We got evidence," Luke corrected. "Charles still owns half the board." "Then we make it impossible for them to ignore." Across town, Maria sat in a sterile medical office, Mateo coloring quietly beside her. The doctor, an older woman with kind eyes, explained the process gently. "Just a swab from inside your cheek. Same for Mateo. Results in 5 to 7 days." Maria's hand shook as she signed the consent forms. Each signature felt like defiance. Charles thought she'd disappear quietly, another casualty of his power. But mothers didn't disappear when their children needed truth. "Mommy, why are we here?" "To answer an important question, mijo." The swab took seconds. Such a small thing to prove such a big lie. That evening, Ava's dining room filled with an unlikely gathering. Luke and Hannah arrived first, carrying a casserole from Grandma Jo. Eli wheeled around the table, setting places with focused concentration. Maria and Mateo came next, the little boy immediately drawn to Eli's chair. "Can I try?" "Maybe later, buddy." Eli's smile was genuine. "First, we eat." The doorbell rang again. Preston stood on the porch, shoulders hunched, looking younger than his 14 years. Can I still come?" Hannah grabbed his arm, pulling him inside. "You're family now. The good kind." They gathered around the table, CEO and mechanic, teenagers and children, immigrant mother and privileged son. The casserole steamed between them like a peace offering. "Before we eat," Luke started, then stopped. "We need to talk about timing." Ava nodded. "Jennifer says the school board meets Thursday. If we present the video, then, my father will know it was me," Preston's voice cracked. "Who else would turn against him?" "You're not turning against anyone," Pastor Lila said firmly. "You're turning toward truth." "He'll disown me." "Maybe." Luke's honesty was gentle but clear. "But you'll own yourself." Preston stared at his plate, processing. Then, with shaking hands, he looked up. "I'll do it. I'll testify. About the video, about his threats to Maria, about—" His voice dropped. "About how he talks about Eli when no one's listening." Eli wheeled closer, offering Preston his hand. A moment stretched between them, bully and bullied, finding something new. Preston took it. "We do this together," Eli said simply. Mateo, oblivious to the weight of the moment, piped up. "Can we eat now? I'm hungry." Laughter broke the tension. Hannah served casserole while Maria poured water. Conversation flowed, strategy mixed with normal life. Luke helped Preston with a reading assignment between bites. Ava and Maria discussed lawyers in Spanish, making Mateo giggle at his mother's formal vocabulary. "Thursday, then," Ava confirmed. "We present everything, the video, Maria's test results if they're ready, Preston's testimony." "And if the board sides with Charles anyway?" Hannah asked. "Then we go public, media, social networks, everything." Ava's CEO steel showed through. "Charles understands one language, pressure. We'll speak it fluently." As plates emptied and plans solidified, Pastor Lila raised her hand. "Before anyone leaves, may we?" Without hesitation, hands reached across the table. Luke's calloused fingers linked with Ava's manicured ones. Preston gripped Eli's hand like an anchor. Maria held Mateo with one hand, Hannah with the other. The circle completed itself. "Lord, you see this table. You see these hearts. Give us courage for Thursday. Give us strength for whatever comes after. Help us remember that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs brave souls willing to speak it. Amen." "Amen?" echoed around the table. They held on a moment longer, this unlikely family forged by crisis, bound by choice. The prep school library smelled of old paper and fresh panic. Board members shifted in leather chairs while parents packed the hall outside, pressing against glass doors for glimpses of the emergency meeting. The mahogany table gleamed like a battlefield. Charles entered first, Italian suit sharp enough to cut, his smile a weapon. He shook hands with board allies, ignoring the crowd's murmurs. His confidence filled the room like expensive cologne, suffocating and artificial. Maria slipped in quietly, Mateo's small hand in hers. They sat in metal folding chairs against the wall, out of place among the wood paneling and oil paintings. Mateo swung his legs, humming softly, unaware his presence was a living accusation. The glass doors opened again. Ava and Luke walked in together, her heels clicking authority, his work boots solid and sure. The flash drive rested in Ava's palm like a grenade pin. "This is highly irregular," Board Chair Morrison began, her voice wavering, "calling an emergency session based on allegations." "Based on evidence," Ava's voice cut clean. "Which you need to see." Charles laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Really? We're entertaining this circus? A bitter employee's fantasies and a mechanic's hurt feelings?" "You'll want to watch this, Charles." Luke's calm was more threatening than any shout. The projector hummed to life. The room darkened. On the screen, grainy security footage began to play. There was Charles's fixer, Eddie Vaughn, in the school parking lot 3 days before the scandal broke. Money changed hands with 2 teenage boys, not Preston's friends, but kids from Millbrook High. The audio was faint but clear enough. "You just say the mechanic paid you to act hurt. Make it believable." Gasps rippled through the room. Parents outside pressed closer to the glass. The footage cut to another angle, Eddie splicing video on a laptop, manufacturing the evidence that nearly destroyed Luke. The timestamp matched. The deception was undeniable. "That proves nothing," Charles snarled, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Deep fakes. AI, anyone can—" "It's from your own security system." Ava pulled out a receipt. Amazing what a good IT consultant can recover from deleted files. The board members exchanged glances. Morrison's fingers drummed the table. Then Preston stood. The room went silent. Charles's son, his legacy, his mirror, standing on shaking legs in front of everyone. I have something to say. Preston, sit down. Charles's command cracked like a whip. No. One word, 2 letters. A revolution. Preston faced the board, then turned to include the crowd, visible through the glass doors. My father paid Eddie Vaughn. I heard the phone calls. I saw the transfers. His voice broke, rebuilt itself, continued. He's done this before. Destroyed people who challenged him. Mr. Carter just wanted kids like Eli to belong. Preston turned to find Eli in the crowd, meeting his eyes directly. I bullied you, not because I hated you, but because I was scared. Scared of being less than perfect. Scared of my father seeing my dyslexia as weakness. Tears ran down Preston's face, but he didn't wipe them. Mr. Carter's been teaching me to read better, for free, after everything I did. The silence was absolute. Even Mateo stopped humming. My father calls Maria garbage, says Mateo is a mistake that should have been handled. Preston's voice gained strength. But Mateo's my brother, and I'm done pretending he's not. You ungrateful little... Charles lunged forward, but Luke stepped between them. Touch him, and I'll forget I'm in a library. Charles's face went purple. This is conspiracy. Coaching. They've brainwashed my son. The only brainwashing, Preston said quietly, was thinking your approval mattered more than the truth. Board member Janet Williams cleared her throat. Mr. Whitmore, these are serious allegations. Combined with the video evidence... It's all lies. Charles's composure shattered completely. That woman trapped me. Her brat isn't mine. I'll sue everyone in this room. I'll bury this pathetic school. Morrison's gavel came down hard. Mr. Whitmore, you're suspended from all school involvement pending full investigation. The crowd erupted. Through the glass doors, cheers mixed with applause. Parents hugged. Students chanted Eli's name. Charles stood frozen, his empire crumbling in real time. He looked at Preston with pure venom. You're no son of mine. Finally, Preston whispered, something we agree on. Charles stormed toward the doors, but the crowd wouldn't part. Parents who'd cowered before him now stood firm. He had to push through, their judgment following him like thunder. At the doorway, he turned back, pointing at Luke, Ava, Maria. This isn't over. I'll destroy every one of you. Get in line, Ava said coolly. I've faced scarier men in prettier suits. Charles vanished into the parking lot. His Mercedes peeled out, leaving rubber and rage in its wake. Inside, Maria sobbed quietly, relief and fear tangled together. Morrison approached her, voice gentle. Ms. Santos, your position is reinstated immediately, with back pay. The crowd surged inside, order dissolving into celebration. Eli wheeled through the mass, reaching Preston. That was brave. That was terrifying. Yeah, Eli grinned. But you did it anyway. The morning sun hadn't yet burned off the dew when the courier knocked on Ava's office door. She signed for the envelope with steady hands, though her pulse quickened. The DNA Laboratories logo stared back at her, clinical and final. Inside, the results were clear. 99.97% probability of paternity. Charles Whitmore was Mateo Santos's biological father. Ava grabbed her keys and drove straight to Maria's apartment, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Maria answered in her cleaning uniform, ready for a shift she no longer had to hide from. The results came. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. She stepped back, letting Ava inside the cramped space that smelled of coffee and fresh bread. Ava handed her the paper. Maria read it once, twice, then sank onto the worn sofa. Mateo played with blocks nearby, building a tower that kept falling down and making him giggle. It's true. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. All these years of him denying, making me feel crazy, worthless. She pulled Mateo into her lap, tears streaming down her face. The little boy touched her cheek, confused. "Why crying, Mama?" Maria kissed his forehead, held him close enough to feel his heartbeat. "Now you'll always be seen, mijo. Always." "I'll stand with you in court," Ava promised. "Charles will pay support. He'll acknowledge Mateo publicly. We'll make sure of it." Maria nodded, unable to speak through her tears, not sad anymore, but something closer to release. By noon, word had spread through Maple Ridge like wildfire through dry grass. The salon knew. The diner knew. Pastor Lila's prayer chain activated with unprecedented efficiency. Reporters descended on Charles's estate, their vans lining the circular drive. Channel 7, Channel 4, even a crew from Columbus. Charles's curtain stayed drawn, his gates locked. Security guards turned everyone away, but the cameras kept rolling. Inside his marble fortress, Charles watched his life implode on 3 different news channels. His wife Catherine had left that morning, taking only her jewelry and her dignity. Her lawyer's letter sat on his desk. Separation papers, division of assets, full custody of Preston. His phone rang constantly. Board resignations, canceled contracts, former allies distancing themselves. Each ring was another nail in his reputation's coffin. At the prep school, Morrison called Luke personally. "Mr. Carter, on behalf of the entire board, I apologize. Your program is fully reinstated with increased funding. We were wrong, shamefully wrong." Luke stood in his garage, phone pressed to his ear, oil-stained hands trembling slightly. "Thank you. No, thank you for standing firm when we didn't." When Eli heard the news after school, he practically launched himself from his chair into Luke's arms. "Coach, we did it! We really did it!" Luke held the boy tight, something healing in his chest that had been broken since his wife died. This feeling, protective, proud, paternal, maybe he'd earned the right to feel it again. "You did it, buddy. You never gave up." "Neither did you." That evening, the summer air hung sweet and thick with honeysuckle. Ava's porch became command central for their small revolution's victory celebration. Maria arrived with homemade empanadas, Mateo racing ahead to play. Luke brought Hannah, who immediately started teaching Mateo to catch fireflies in mason jars. Preston sat on the steps, still staying with Luke, his whole world rearranged but somehow lighter for it. Eli rolled up beside him. "Your dad's not coming back, is he?" "No." Preston watched the fireflies blink. "But maybe that's okay. You've got us now." Preston's eyes welled. All his life he'd had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. Now, sitting on these worn wooden steps, he had more than his father's fortune ever provided. In the yard, Mateo shrieked with delight as a firefly landed on his nose. Hannah lifted him up, spinning him around until they both collapsed laughing in the grass. On the porch, Luke settled into the swing beside Ava, Maria on her other side. They rocked gently, watching their children, biological, chosen, and everything in between, create their own constellation of joy. "I haven't felt this much hope in years." Luke's admission came quiet, almost lost in the creak of the swing chains. Ava found his hand, squeezed it. His fingers were rough, honest, real. "Hope looks good on you." Maria smiled, her first real smile in days. "On all of us." The evening deepened, painting the sky purple and gold. Fireflies rose from the grass like tiny wishes taking flight. Neighbors walked by, waving, stopping to chat. The wall between the hill and the mill side of town seemed thinner somehow, maybe even crumbling. Eli pumped his arms, racing across the grass in his chair, wheels leaving tracks in the dew. Hannah and Mateo chased him. Preston, too, all of them laughing loud enough to disturb the peace Charles Whitmore had always insisted upon. "We won, Mom!" Eli's shout carried across the yard, pure triumph in every syllable. "We actually won!" The fireflies blinked around him like tiny stars, like promises, like all the lights Charles Whitmore had tried to extinguish but couldn't. The prep school gym transformed under dozens of willing hands. Ladders stretched toward the ceiling as volunteers strung lights between basketball hoops. Banners unfurled. "Roll with it day returns." In bold letters, Hannah had painted herself. The Paralympians arrived Thursday morning, their vans pulling up like cavalry returning to finish what they'd started. "Looking good, team," Coach Reyna called out, her prosthetic leg clicking against the polished floor as she surveyed the preparations. "Let's make this one they'll never forget." Deshawn and May unloaded equipment while discussing station layouts with Luke. 20 athletes, 20 stories of triumph, all ready to show Maple Ridge what possibility looked like. Outside on the south wall, Hannah stood on scaffolding, paint smeared and focused. Her mural spread across 20 feet of brick, wheels of every kind interlocking like Olympic rings. Wheelchair wheels, bike wheels, gears, all flowing together in brilliant colors that caught the morning sun. "Can I help?" Eli rolled up, a paintbrush already in hand. "Thought you'd never ask." Hannah grinned, handing him a can of azure blue. "Start with that wheel there. Make it shine." Eli dipped his brush with the concentration of Michelangelo, adding his strokes to something larger than himself. Preston appeared minutes later, wordlessly picking up a brush. The three worked in comfortable rhythm, their creation growing with each pass. "Never thought I'd be painting with you two," Preston admitted, adding gold highlights to a wheel's rim. "Never thought you'd apologize in front of the whole school, either." Eli's tone held no malice, just fact. "Yeah, well," Preston focused on his brushwork. "Things change." "People change," Hannah corrected, "when they choose to." Across town, Maria sat in a small law office, Mateo coloring quietly beside her. The lawyer, Ms. Chen, spread documents across the desk with practiced efficiency. "The DNA results make this straightforward. Charles owes 6 years of back support, plus ongoing payments. We're also establishing a college trust fund." Maria's hands didn't shake anymore. "He threatened me, said he'd have me deported." "Empty threats from a desperate man. Your status is legal, your son is an American citizen, and Charles Whitmore is about to learn that money can't erase responsibility." Mateo looked up from his drawing. A house with stick figures holding hands. "Will I have to see him?" "Only if you want to, sweetheart," Ms. Chen assured him. "This is about making sure you're taken care of, not forcing a relationship." Maria straightened in her chair. No more hunching, no more trying to become invisible in corners. The truth had set her spine straight. Luke's garage became an unlikely classroom each afternoon. Preston sat at the workbench, sounding out words from a third-grade reader while Luke rebuilt a transmission. No judgment, no rushing, just patient repetition. "The cat sat on the..." Preston paused, frowning at the next word. "Break it down. What sounds do you see?" Matt? There you go." Luke tightened a bolt without looking up. "Your brain just processes differently. Nothing wrong with that. Some of the best mechanics I know can barely read a manual but can hear what's wrong with an engine from across the shop." "My dad said I was stupid." "Your dad says a lot of things that aren't true." After reading practice, Preston joined Eli at the church parking lot for hand cycle training. The boys had developed an easy rhythm, Preston jogging alongside, calling out encouragement while Eli pushed harder, faster, his arms growing stronger by the day. "You're getting quick," Preston panted, struggling to keep pace. "Race you to the stop sign?" "You're on." They tore down the empty street, Eli's wheels singing against asphalt, Preston's feet pounding beside him. Both boys collapsed at the finish, laughing and gasping. "Tied?" Preston declared. "Liar, I won by a wheel." "Fine, but I want a rematch tomorrow." The town itself seemed to shift, like a photograph slowly coming into focus. Mrs. Patterson from the flower shop donated centerpieces for the celebration. The hardware store owner, who'd once muttered about special treatment, now volunteered to build a permanent ramp for the church. Even the country club wives, who'd stood silent during that first awful morning, showed up with casseroles and willing hands. "Funny how seeing the truth changes people," Pastor Lila observed, watching volunteers stream through the gym doors. "Or maybe," Grandma Jo suggested, arranging cookies on platters. It just gives them permission to be who they wanted to be all along. Friday afternoon, Ava walked through the transformed gym, taking it all in. Streamers caught the light. The Paralympians' equipment gleamed. Stations stood ready for tomorrow's crowds. But what stopped her was the sound. Eli and Preston's laughter echoing from the far corner where they practiced wheelchair basketball shots. "Never thought I'd see that," Luke said, appearing beside her. "Which part?" "Any of it." "All of it." He gestured at the controlled chaos of preparation. "This town's had a divided heart for so long, I'd forgotten it could beat as one." Ava watched her son execute a perfect spin move around Preston, both boys whooping with delight. The CEO armor she'd worn for so long felt unnecessary here. These people didn't need her resume or her portfolio. They needed her presence, her truth, her willingness to stand in the mess and build something better. "You know what?" She turned to Luke, surprising herself with the admission. "For the first time since we moved here, Maple Ridge feels like home." Luke's smile was answer enough. Around them, their community, broken and healing, fumbling and learning, prepared to celebrate not just inclusion, but transformation. Tomorrow would bring crowds and cameras, but tonight held something better: the quiet joy of belonging. The golden Saturday afternoon light poured through the gym windows, turning dust motes into tiny stars. Every seat filled. With more people standing along the walls, the Maple Ridge Prep Band struck up "Eye of the Tiger" as the doors swung wide. 20 Paralympians entered in formation. Wheelchairs gleamed. Prosthetics caught the light. They moved with the confidence of warriors who'd already won their hardest battles. The crowd erupted, not polite applause, but full-throated cheering that rattled the rafters. Eli waited at the starting line, hands gripping his hand cycle's wheels. His racing helmet bore fresh paint, lightning bolts Hannah had added that morning. Preston stood beside him, starter flag raised high, grinning wider than anyone had ever seen him. "Ready, Reynolds?" "Born ready, Whitmore." The flag dropped. Eli shot forward, legs secured, arms pumping in smooth rhythm. Luke jogged the inside track, not coaching, just keeping pace with pure pride on his face. Other kids lined the route, beating thundersticks and chanting Eli's name. 3 laps, each faster than the last. On the final turn, Eli glanced at the bleachers. His mom stood between Maria and Grandma Jo, all 3 women cheering through tears. He dug deeper, wheels singing, and crossed the finish line with arms raised. The noise could have lifted the roof. Pastor Lila took the microphone, waiting for the celebration to settle. "Before we continue, let's acknowledge what we're really doing here. We're not just launching a foundation. We're declaring that every child, every person belongs." Her blessing was brief but powerful, calling for hearts to stay open long after the banners came down. Ava approached the podium. No corporate PowerPoint, no rehearsed executive speak, just truth. "6 weeks ago, my son was mocked in your parking lot." Her voice carried steady and clear. "I wanted to leave, pack up, drive away, pretend this place didn't exist. But Luke Carter showed up with 20 athletes who refused to let cruelty have the last word." She found Luke in the crowd. He stood near the equipment table, Hannah beside him, both watching with quiet attention. "This town taught me something. Dignity isn't about position or bank accounts. It's about showing up. It's about Preston Whitmore." She nodded at the boy who flushed but stood taller, finding courage to admit mistakes and change. It's about Maria Santos refusing to let fear silence truth. The spotlight found Maria holding Mateo on her hip. The crowd's applause swelled as Ava beckoned her forward. "Maria, you spoke when power tried to crush you. Your bravery started an avalanche of truth that changed everything." Maria accepted the microphone with steady hands. "Thank you. I was scared. But these people," she gestured at the packed gym, "showed me I wasn't alone. That's all any of us need, to not be alone." Mateo waved at the crowd, innocent and delighted, drawing laughter that broke the emotional tension. And Grandma Joe, Ava continued, as Luke helped his mother to the stage, you fed us when we were hungry, not just for food, but for belonging. Your casseroles were love in aluminum pans. Well, Grandma Joe said into the microphone, somebody had to make sure y'all didn't starve while saving the world. The laughter rolled through the gym like warm thunder. The Paralympians took over then, transforming the space into pure joy. Deshawn led wheelchair basketball drills with local kids. May demonstrated para-archery with laser focus. Coach Reyna organized relay races that mixed able-bodied runners with chair racers, everyone scrambling to keep up. Preston pushed a basketball chair with surprising skill, having practiced in secret. When he made his first basket, Eli led the cheering, their friendship now visible to all. Veterans in the crowd stood a little straighter, seeing themselves in the athletes. Teachers wiped eyes, watching students who'd never spoken now working together. Parents who'd stood silent during the bullying now wore Roll With It t-shirts, volunteering at water stations. The afternoon built toward its climax, the grand relay. 4 teams, each mixing Paralympians, students, and community members. Eli anchored Team Lightning, his choice. Preston captained Team Thunder. Hannah led Team Storm. A shy freshman girl in leg braces headed Team Tornado. The race was beautiful chaos. Wheelchairs and runners wove through cones. Handoffs fumbled and recovered. The crowd stomped and screamed for every team equally. When Team Lightning edged out victory, Eli's celebration was cut short. The other teams lifted him onto their shoulders, chair and all, parading him around the gym. Throughout it all, Ava found herself gravitating toward Luke. Not planned, just natural as breathing. During the relay, their hands brushed as they cheered. When Eli crossed the finish line, Luke caught her mid-jump, both laughing. Standing together, watching the celebration, their shoulders touched and neither moved away. "We did it," she said softly. "No, they did it." Luke nodded at the controlled chaos. Preston teaching a younger boy chair skills, Maria laughing with other parents, Hannah painting temporary tattoos on giggling kids. We just opened the door. The sun slanted lower, painting everything gold. The band played again, something triumphant that made the walls vibrate. Eli zoomed past in his chair, part of an impromptu parade of wheels and walkers and runners, all moving together. The roar of celebration shook dust from the rafters, but nobody minded. They were too busy becoming what they'd always had the capacity to be, a community where everyone belonged. The church hall glowed with string lights and warmth. Tables groaned under casseroles, Grandma Joe's famous tuna noodle, Pastor Lila's cornbread, Maria's tamales that had become the surprise hit of every potluck. The Paralympians mixed with townsfolk like they'd lived here forever, Deshawn teaching card tricks to wide-eyed kids, while May showed teenagers how to fold origami cranes. Hannah stood beside a covered wall, paint-stained fingers fidgeting with the cloth. She'd worked on this mural for 3 weeks, stealing hours between school and helping Dad in the garage. "Ready?" Pastor Lila asked. Hannah nodded. The cloth fell. The mural stretched across the entire wall, wheels of every kind interlocking like Olympic rings, but warmer, more alive. Wheelchair spokes merged with bike wheels, stroller wheels, even the wheels of Grandma Joe's grocery cart. Hands of different colors and sizes reached between them, linking everything together. At the center, in letters that seemed to pulse with life, "We roll together." The room fell silent. Then Maria began clapping, tears streaming. The applause built until it thundered against the walls. "Hannah Carter," Coach Reyna announced, "you've captured what we've been trying to say all along." The Paralympians formed a circle around Eli. Deshawn carried a wooden box. "Eli Reynolds," he said formally, though his eyes sparkled, "for showing us that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about rolling forward anyway." Inside lay a medal, not gold or silver, but carved from wood with "Courage in Motion" etched deep. They'd made it themselves in Luke's garage. Eli's hands shook as he lifted it. I didn't do anything special. That's where you're wrong, May said. You showed up. You kept showing up. That's the hardest thing in the world. Preston stepped forward then. No swagger, no pretense. He pulled Eli into a fierce hug. Brother, he said simply. The word carried weight. Apology, promise, and friendship all at once. Eli hugged back just as hard. Luke touched Ava's elbow. Want some air? Outside, the September evening wrapped around them like silk. Stars scattered across the Ohio sky, bright without city lights to dim them. They walked to the edge of the parking lot where kids' laughter drifted from inside. 6 weeks, Ava said. 6 weeks ago I sat in my Cleveland office thinking this move would destroy everything I'd built. And? She turned to face him fully. It did destroy it. My corporate image, my 5-year plan, my carefully controlled life. All of it. Gone. Luke's face fell slightly. And thank God for that. She stepped closer. Because what I built to replace it, this community, these friendships, watching Eli bloom, seeing you every day, it's real. It's messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying, but it's real. Ava, I spent so many years climbing ladders, Luke, building walls to protect us, but you in this town taught me something else. Walls keep out pain, sure, but they keep out joy too. Luke's hand found hers, calloused fingers gentle. You know I'm just a mechanic who coaches kids on weekends? You're a man who shows up, who builds ramps instead of walls, who saw my son as whole when others saw him as broken. Her voice caught. Who sees me, not the CEO, not the image, just me. I see you, he said quietly. Have since that first day you stood in the parking lot, ready to take on the world for Eli. I'm not going anywhere, Luke. My board can threaten all they want. Cleveland can keep their corner office. This is home now. It's not going to be easy. Small town, big opinions. People talk. Let them talk. She squeezed his hand. We'll be too busy building something beautiful to notice. Luke pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her cheek. I'm not good with words like you, but I promise, whatever road comes next, we'll travel it together, walking, rolling, whatever it takes. She smiled through tears that finally spilled over. Yes. The church door burst open. Eli, Hannah, Preston, and Mateo tumbled out, their laughter bouncing off the stars. Mom, Luke, come play, Eli called. Yeah, Mr. Carter, Preston added. Old people can play tag too. Old people? Luke mock growled, already jogging toward them. The game was chaos. Eli's chair spun and wheeled with advantage, none of them expected. Mateo shrieked with joy, his little legs pumping. Hannah used her long stride strategically, while Preston discovered his reading struggles hadn't affected his dodging skills. The adults gave chase half-heartedly, more interested in the joy than the competition. Other families drifted out, drawn by the laughter. Soon the parking lot filled with playing children and watching parents. Maria taught a group of moms a clapping game from her childhood. Grandma Jo directed from her lawn chair, calling out directions and cheating outrageously in favor of whoever was smallest. The Paralympians emerged too, organizing impromptu races, turning the space into an extension of the celebration. The town that once divided along lines of money and privilege now mixed freely under the stars. Ava found herself beside Luke again as they watched Eli zoom past, Preston keeping pace, Hannah painting glow-in-the-dark stars on Mateo's cheeks. This is only the beginning, she whispered. Luke wrapped his arm around her shoulders, solid and sure. The best kind of beginning. The lights of Maple Ridge twinkled below, no longer a town split by hills, but united by something stronger than geography. They'd found the shortest distance between hearts wasn't a straight line but a ramp, built with love and courage, wide enough for everyone to roll together toward tomorrow. If you enjoyed the story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.